over the past couple days, I was out covering CPAC, which is the annual conservative confab here in Washington, D.C. And so there I was, busily talking to whomever I thought might have a notable thought to share. And we're going to play some of these notable clips for you. But just by way of introduction, what I found unusually interesting about this year's CPAC, and I had been to CPACs in the past, I don't think in a number of years, maybe even pre-Trump is the last time I went. But definitely this year, what stood out to me was how international CPAC really has become. So in the past, it might have been a little bit wearying for me to just sit through the standard Republican talking points. But with so much of an international presence at CPAC now, it kind of makes things a little more spicy. So now we're talking about potentially how to constitute or not a global conservative or a right-wing coalition, more so than something that's just rather myopically focused on American domestic or foreign affairs. And so one of the main points of friction, and you know me, I'm always looking to probe and prod at points of friction, is how a bunch of these right-wing parties that are seeking to endear themselves to Trump and the Trump movement, the ascendant Trump governance in D.C., how they will reconcile some of their pretty striking points of departure. And so one of the right-wing parties that was at CPAC or had representatives there was the Law and Justice Party in Poland, namely a former prime minister who's also still in the EU government, who is very pro-Ukraine, very antagonistic toward Russia, drawing on this tendency within much of Eastern Europe, Poland in particular, to continue to look at Russia through the lens of the Soviet Empire and the subjugation, as they would put it or see it, of these Eastern European provinces to Soviet domination. And they're trying to convince people on the right, including in the United States, who still might be a bit skeptical of the broader antagonism toward Russia, that they must continue with this antipathy. On the other hand, there are parties like the AfD, or Alternative for Germany, who were just in the German federal elections yesterday, who also had a presence at CPAC, and who were seeking to refute the criticisms made of their party by the other right-wing parties in Eastern Europe, like in Poland, who view the AfD as a very insidious threat. I wanted to show you a clip of first my interviewing the former Polish prime minister, his name is Mateusz Morawiecki, on how he would characterize the AfD, followed by a member of the European Parliament from the AfD, Christine Anderson, responding to those critiques. And this is notable because, again, the German federal election was yesterday. The AfD came in second place, a little over 20%. It's looking like the Christian Union Party, run by probably incoming Chancellor Merz, is going to maintain their firewall policy to not bring in the AfD into a governing coalition, despite J.D. Vance going to the Munich Security Conference recently and seeming to urge the ruling parties in Europe to no longer have this kind of firewall policy where they won't even entertain the idea of bringing in these disliked right-wing parties into some kind of governing structure. So let's play that first clip for you.
How do you describe the AfD party in Germany ideologically in contrast with your conception of conservatism?
Well, ideologically, I completely disagree with their position vis-à-vis the Second World War and all the Nazi history, because I see some attempts to justify some crimes, and here I'm completely opposing to this. That's item number one. Number two is they are too much inclined to Russia, and I think that significant part of the German elite would like to go back to business as usual, and this is not they are not an exception, the AfD, because in CDU, in SPD, and all the other parties, maybe with the exception of the Greens, most of the German economic and business elite would like to go back to business as usual with Russia. And I hope it's not going to be the case. So I disagree with all those elements. But
Are they far right? Are they fascistic? How do you describe? Like, what label was most apt in terms of how you would describe them?
I describe them as far right, but I also disagree with all the labeling of the parties which are pro-Russian as the ones which are from my political camp, because we are absolutely very vigilant and very watchful to all the threats coming from the east.
Okay, so with Christy Anderson, you're a member of the European Parliament for the AfD, Alternative for Germany in English. German federal elections coming up this weekend. We spoke yesterday to the former Prime Minister of Poland, Mr. Morawiecki. I think I'm mispronouncing the name. I'm sorry. We'll put it in right. But anyway, we were asking him what is the difference between your Polish conservatism, as he sees it, and the AfD. And he went on a whole explanation about how he finds the AfD to be dangerous, and about how the AfD is not repenting for World War II, and maybe even want to change the borders with Poland. So how do you explain this? Because we're at a right-wing conference, and there seem to be some differences between different factions of the right in terms of how they perceive the AfD. How do you explain that?
Well, it is actually hard to explain, but you might want to look at, we live on this rather small continent in Europe together, and the whole world actually, envies us to live on that small continent with so many different cultures, history, different languages. And of course, we all have our national interests, and we all have our national pride, whether, some countries might admit to that or not. That's just a fact, and that just explains it, right? So, but I mean, I would want to correct him. We do not want to change any borders in Europe, right? We would be totally satisfied with just securing our own border, which should be the right of every country, every nation, to secure its own border, and that's what we are pretty much fighting for.
How about the claim that the AfD does not want to take responsibility for Germany's role in World War II in a way that's offensive to Poles?
That's a downright lie.
He did say that, right?
Well, that's a downright lie. We are taking responsibility.
I'll show you who he is, because I mispronounced the name. I just want to make sure I have it correct. You know him?
No, I don't even know him.
He was the Prime Minister of Poland.
Oh, okay.
And he's the leader of the European conservative group in the EU Parliament. Yeah.
No, but it is a downright lie. We have taken responsibility for the cruel and horrible things that the Nazis actually afflicted upon humanity, and we have given a promise to never again. And we've also given a promise to fight the beginnings. The thing is just this: how can anyone live up to the promise of never again if they are not even prepared to look at how brought this Nazi regime about? How did it come into power? What were the incremental steps? I mean, Nazi Germany did not start out by rounding up Jews and transporting them off to camps. That was the end point. But the little incremental steps before that, how they came into power and how people just looked away and were gaslighted into thinking that the government was looking out for their own good. That's exactly what we have seen during this whole COVID madness. And if I'm now, or at that time spoke up against these little incremental steps and how they were erecting a totalitarian regime, then I was being slapped with the accusation of trivializing the Holocaust. I was doing the opposite of that. I was warning. This is how the Nazis did it back then. It was all about public health, by the way. That's how they ushered it in. And
censorship and so.
Exactly. And then to hear this journalist from CBS now claiming that the Holocaust was caused by free speech. I mean, seriously,
I put out that clip actually on Sunday that was then shared by J.D. Vance. So yes,
that's just an example.
I subjected myself to watching Face the Nation on CBS.
But that's just an example of how totally twisted their minds are at this point. It wasn't free speech; it was the lack of free speech that actually brought the Holocaust about. So, and we need to fight that, and my party is absolutely determined to fight that, and we will never stand for having anyone tell us and accuse us that we are not ready to take responsibility for these horrible, atrocious things that the Nazis did. We are actually the only ones fighting it, to be quite clear.
So that's pretty interesting, right? The MEP there for the AfD party is actually making the argument that it's only the AfD that is the most stridently opposing the legacy of Nazi Germany, to which they are regularly attacked as being the purveyors of, or that they are trying to reinvigorate the legacy of National Socialism somehow in Germany. Now, you could perhaps take issue with certain aspects of that claim, but it is notable that particularly in front of an American audience, the representatives of the AfD are actually rehearsing this idea that they are the most fervent condemners of the history of Nazi Germany. Meanwhile, you have other right-wing factions like in Poland and elsewhere denouncing them as being too sympathetic to Nazi history. Now, I want to mention that you can go to the System Update channels on Rumble, YouTube, and elsewhere, and we're going to post the full interviews of all the ones that we discuss on the show. And I think they are worth watching in full. Like I said, the German federal election, this was one day before it. It took place yesterday, Sunday, and her party, the AfD, got 20.8%, whereas the CDU, more of like the center-right party, got 28.5%. So they're going to have their candidate or their representative as the Chancellor of Germany. And it looks like the AfD will probably still be frozen out unless something unexpected happens, notwithstanding their determination to convince everyone that they are, in fact, opposed to their who are claimed to be their historical precedents or antecedents, which is the German Nazi Party, which I personally don't think they have much that's immediately discernible that in common with. I mean, it seems like they want to impose some pretty harsh immigration restriction, and maybe they're a little bit more skeptical of imposing sanctions on Russia, which are beliefs that you think could be accommodated within a general political system without everybody having this paranoid resistance to even dealing with them at all. So I don't know if necessarily if I was a German, I would be a member of the AfD or not, but I don't know that I would necessarily think it's sensible to impose this ultimate firewall on them so that they cannot have any voice or any role in German governing institutions because people are still so preoccupied with stuff that went on 80 years ago.
Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.